that is Zoran Mamdani, the Islamist, giving his own assessment of America's 250th birthday, as if anyone asked. In America's biggest, arguably most important city, or at least it once was, New York City, where Lady Liberty holds her torch. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This is where people came first to this country to immigrate here legally and join the American experiment. And now this guy runs that city.
Nearly a decade ago, I too felt what you feel. The joy of no longer being just a New Yorker, but an American too. You each hold a special power, the power to determine what America means. The powerful have always known their answer. America, in their view, is an arena of supremacy, where only a select few are allowed freedom, where not all are created equal. America, if you ask them, becomes less the more people it welcomes. America, they will tell you, belongs only to those with the right accent or the right shade of skin. The rest of us, they insist, should be grateful for merely being allowed to visit. How small they are, how weak, how unoriginal. At every moment in our past, those who led through exclusion and isolation have tried to win power and enrich themselves by turning us against one another. Division is the oldest trick in politics and the cheapest. But time and again, including 250 years ago, those forces of division have been vanquished by the forces of progress. As Thomas Paine once wrote, "This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty. Hither have they fled." And yet today, too many of our leaders do not believe in a vision of this nation as an asylum for the persecuted, but rather as one that persecutes those seeking asylum. As we mark 250 years, what do we see? We see a city of contradictions within a nation of contradictions. We see the wealthiest country in the history of the world, one where children go to sleep hungry while the world's first trillionaire hungers for more. We see monopolies that dominate every industry and oligarchs who buy elections. We see masked agents terrorizing our streets, eating food cooked by our undocumented neighbors before spiriting them away in unmarked vans. We see a nation whose immense wealth has been built by those with calloused, dirt-streaked hands, those who toil on factory floors and chisel into stone. And we see a nation that has allowed so much of that wealth to be held instead in the soft hands of a precious few. Yes, we see America in a health insurance industry that exploits the sick, but that is not all we see when we look for America. We see it too in the nurse who works a double shift and then stops on her way home to check on an ailing neighbor. Yes, we see America in corporate landlords for whom negligence is a business model. We see it too in the father who tucks his children into bed beneath a ceiling stained with leaks, who wakes before dawn to go to work and still believes his country can do better by his family. Yes, we see America when we spend our tax dollars on bombs and bailouts, when we sell our elections to the highest bidder. Yet we see it just as clearly in every American who still believes this country belongs to we, the people. We see America each time neighbors link arms with neighbors,
I can't
without asking how long they have.
Okay, Aaron, please, I just can't. It's torture. And I'm in too good of a mood after the 250th birthday. Although, could I ask quickly, Aaron, one last technical question. I know you're not a set designer. Can you explain to me why the mayor of New York is sitting at a desk that appears to be turned around facing the camera? Why is he not sitting behind a desk that should be turned around the other way, or am I making that up?
Yeah, that set design is very weird because, like, you pointed out the desk, but also his back is right up against a fireplace. It's really weird.
It's just the strangest. He's got these hostages standing around him holding the American flag, not smiling, and then he's sitting at a desk that appears to be, I mean, I have a desk with drawers in my office at home, and it is the drawers are on the side of where he would be seated. Not that way. So I'd be very curious. Maybe the front of the desk is scuffed up and they didn't want to show it. Maybe that's the best they've got, so they didn't want to show the scuffed up front. I don't know. Well, at any rate, it's ironic, isn't it? Interesting that Zoran Mamdani talks about how the politics of division have always been used to turn fellow Americans of one another, and yet that thing, that thing that was going to drone on, and I could no longer listen to. That's exactly what he is. That's what he does. That's what's getting elected in left-wing enclaves in this country. And it's on the march. It's very serious. And while I know the 4th of July is a few days behind us now, and we've now officially turned 250 years old, you can see it. The American left has never been more unhappy and more angry and more unhinged about who this country is and our optimism and hope for the future in it. 250 years ago, in the city of Philadelphia, a handful of really remarkable people changed the entire course of history. And it wasn't by inventing a new government or system of government. It was by declaring a very simple ancient truth. And this is what the likes of Zoran Mamdani willfully ignore and try to get voters to forget. The ancient truth that our founders codified, very simply, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That sentence changed the world. Before America, governments generally claimed that your rights or individual rights flowed from whoever was ruling, whoever was on top. And don't make any mistake, a guy like Zoran Mamdani, that's exactly what he wants. He believes that everyone's rights, everything anyone enjoys, flows directly from him as the supreme leader of New York City. And if he can engineer it that way, he will. The founders, however, turned that whole notion upside down. They said rights come from God. That's it. They don't come from government leaders or kings or mayors. Government only exists to protect the rights that came to you from God. And that, folks, is the most revolutionary political idea that was ever written, ever. Every political debate eventually comes down to one single question. Who's in control of your life? Who owns your life? You ever ask that question rhetorically? Now, people of faith will say, as Christians, well, Jesus Christ owns my life. No, I understand that. As a spiritual matter, that's true. But here, on earth, as you navigate your day-to-day life, your rights, we believe, come from God. At least those of us who are sane and believe in a creator. If you don't believe in a creator, then from whom do your rights come? Who owns your life? And you have to answer that question. Government officials. They tell you what you can and can't do, what rights you will and won't have, what freedoms you will or won't enjoy. You see, if you don't believe in a creator, then you only believe in man. You only believe that anything you enjoy, your rights and your freedoms, only come because you're allowed to have them. That's why the belief in a creator is so important. And that's why the founders codifying that is so important. And it's what, again, makes guys like Zoran Mamdani so dangerous. They don't want people believing that. They want you to believe that the right leader, a benevolent leader, will come along and gift you everything you want. And they'll take care of your every need as long as you empower them. That's what makes them so dangerous, of course. And so as we look in the rearview mirror at the 4th of July celebration and 250 years, it's not just celebrating calendars. We're choosing now between two very different answers to the question of who's going to run the future, who controls your life, who owns and is responsible for your freedoms and your natural right. One answer says that your life belongs to you. It's your life. You get to control it. You dictate the terms of it. You get to worship freely and speak freely. The other vision says your life belongs to the state, to the collective, Zoran Mamdani. And look, we have history behind us here. It's not like we don't understand both directions. Both paths have been chosen. History has tried both of those options. Kings have claimed that your life belongs to the crown. That's why we fought a revolution. Empires claimed that your freedoms belonged to the empire. It's biblical, actually, and beyond. Every collectivist movement has claimed it belongs to the state. Cuba still believes that. America said exactly the opposite, however. America begins with the individual, and collectivism, as you understand now, begins with the state. And it's why every political debate eventually returns to the same question. Who's in charge of you? Who runs your life? Who owns your life? Think about it. Just apply it in your day-to-day life, across the board, taxes. How much of what you earn do you get to keep? Who determines that? How much of what you earn do you get to keep? How about speech? How freely can you say what you think? And who gives you that right? Property. How much of what you build can the government control? What are you comfortable with? How about your business, if you run one or created one? How about your kids' education? Your future in general? Who decides that stuff? The point is, if you own your life, the government's job is pretty darn simple. Protect your freedoms, your natural gifted freedoms from a creator. Protect those. That's your government's job, period, full stop, and then get out of the way. However, if collectivists like Zoran Mamdani and the American left own your life and they get to tell you and dictate how and when and where you'll go and how much you'll earn and how much freedom you'll enjoy, in the interest of fairness, if the government is in control of your life, then your rights become just permissions. And permissions, as you remember from being a kid, perhaps, I know I did remember, if you were driving at age 16 and maybe you got a ticket or you got into some kind of trouble, what would they do? They'd take the keys away. Zoran Mamdani wants to behave like a parent taking your keys away to the car. And your rights under people like Zoran Mamdani and the American left, they think they're just merely permissions. And permissions, again, as a parent, they can just be taken away from you. And we have seen where that road leads, whether in the Soviet Union or Mao's China or Cuba or countless other collectivist experiments. The pattern is always the same. The state claims authority over speech, property, faith, and eventually they claim authority even over the family itself. Millions have paid the price under regimes that believe just that. Now listen, I support President Trump personally because I know he understands the original American promise. I believe that President Trump trusts citizens more than bureaucracies. I think President Trump trusts families more than government. He certainly trusts entrepreneurs more than central planners. And he believes in freedom over control. And there's not a single person in this country, if they're honest, no matter how lunatic, if they're honest, there's not a single person that can say President Trump has taken any freedom away from them. Those instincts of President Trump's reflect the philosophy that gave birth to this nation. I'm grateful, frankly, that he's presiding over this 250th celebration over the last week. Ronald Reagan once reminded us that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Well, we're that generation. On July 4th of 1776, our founders answered the greatest political question ever asked, and it was very, very simple. As I just stated, who owns your life? Who controls your life? Who runs your life? And the founders codified that. They answered that 250 years ago. You own your life. You do. Under God, with God's blessing and God's gift. You own your life. You control your future. Your rights come from God. And that answer, codified by our founders, made America possible to begin with. And now you've heard all of this dreck that I just played for you, the Sonny Houstons and the Chuck Todds and the Zoran Mamdanis. And you realize, again, just a generation away, this thing teeters in the balance. There are always people that would love nothing more than to see collectivism rise again. So we've got our work cut out for us. Let's make sure that this celebration we've just enjoyed, this great American experiment, let's make sure it stays intact so that we can answer that same question. Who owns your life? Who's in control of you? We can answer it the same way for the next 250 years. But there's opposition on the march, and we've got our work cut out for us. That's why this fall and every election thereafter is so critically important.